Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Fancy show. Welcome, everybody, to another amazing episode of Phoenix History. We are very sport today.
Very sport.
We've got a permission visit today to see Cuckfield ROC Post in Sussex. And we're joined by Ed, who's going to be talking about the history of this wonderful place. The reason why we're all excited is because this one has got a reputation for being one of the best preserved ROC posts that you can have. And so now in the playlist, in the ROC playlist that we have at Phoenix History, this will be the bench, the Premier League, and everything else will be whatever underneath. Start category. I think we should do you know what? I think if you're all interested, we should do like a playlist top 10 of ROC posts.
Well, this is Champions League ROC
Basically,
post.
we can just, this will be number one, then we can just put a top 10 underneath. Jensen, thoughts and feelings, mate?
Good.
Good. Looking forward to it?
Yeah,
good.
We've had some chips.
We have.
So we're ready to go. Yeah. Any nice words before we get on with it?
No, I'm just really excited to look into this one.
The weather has been a little bit against us.
A little bit.
But we're going to be fine, because most it's underground.
That's cool.
Right, coming in, guys. Let's go.
Cool. See you in a bit.
Hi Ed, thank you so much for showing us down into one of the most amazing ROC posts ever. You should be really proud of yourself, obviously, for the amazing work. Please tell us about the history of this wonderful
Okay, so the Royal Observer Corps has got quite a long history, really. Before this was built, they did aircraft spotting in the Second World War, and then end of the Second World War, threat of nuclear war with Russia or the communist state of the Soviet Union, and the powers that be decided to build 1,500 of these, or 1,564, something like that, 1,500 of these every 8 miles or so as the crow flies up and down the country, so they could monitor the effects of fallout post a nuclear strike, so that the government could take the appropriate action with evacuating civilians or where to disperse food stocks to, what the damage is like, that sort of stuff. Seems a little bit nicey. I don't know how well it would have worked, but nonetheless, we had to have a plan for something. So Cuckfield was one of the first posts established in 1925 with the aircraft spotting role, and then the underground bunker here was built in 1962. So the building programme for these started in 1958. Cuckfield was completed in 1962. It's built cut and cover construction, dig a big hole in the ground, line it with some gravel, cast concrete, reinforced concrete, bricks, cover it back up again, and you've got your bunker underground. Or your monitoring post, as it was officially called. That Cuckfield then, apart from a very short period where it closed and then reopened because the ditching post was subject to a lot of flooding, which is not too far from here, Cuckfield was operational until 1991, right to the end of the life of the Corps. And then when the ROC was stood down because the Soviet Union had collapsed, there had been the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, and the threat of nuclear war with the Soviets just wasn't a thing. And this organisation was costing £6 million a year to run at the time, which is an awful lot of money in 1991. and the government decided that it wasn't needed. The threat had gone away, and technology had superseded people sitting in underground rooms looking at analogue gauges. So they stood the core down, all the headquarters, or most of the headquarters, and all of these ROC posts closed. The ROC did carry on for another couple of years as embedded staff on RAF bases as nuclear reporting cells, but by 1995 that role was absorbed into the RAF as just a normal function of the RAF, and then the ROC was completely disbanded by that point. Cuckfield then reverted back to the original landowners, which in this case is the parish council. They've been the landowners since like the 1930s or something like that. So it reverted back to the parish council. They sort of knew what it was because Cuckfield Village has got a really active local history museum and society. So they knew kind of it was important. Didn't really know how to tell the story of it. It was pretty empty and they didn't know what to do with it. So they essentially sealed it up until 2007 when Mark and I first came along. Mark is my colleague who helps me on the open days. Came along, we were surveying these posts at the time. We went to about 900 or so between 2005 and 2007. And we approached the council to see if we could restore it, equip it with some of the equipment we've been given, found on auction houses, eBay, that sort of thing, and open it to the public. The council said, yes, you can do it for 1 year, see how it goes. If it's a success, you can carry on. And we are in our 16th year now. So it's, to be honest with you, it's a little bit become the tail that wags the dog. We thought we might get 5 years or so out of it, and then all the people that were interested would have been and seen it. We thought it was a fairly niche thing, slightly geeky perhaps, but you know, we had over 300 people come over the space of 2 weekends this year, which is quite a lot for a little room that can only fit 5 or 6 people in at once. So we've recreated it off some pictures that we were given by a former observer who was here when the post was closed. As to how it was in the late 1980s, right at stand down. So they've got some of the more modernised equipment, you know, the British Telecom logo Teletalk, the digital display on the radiation meter rather than the analogue gauge it used to be. And we've kind of tried to do it as a bit of a Mary Celeste sort of feel, as if the observers have literally just stepped out to go to the pub or something like that, and then you've just come across this, which, well, I don't know, you guys tell me. I think we sort of achieved that. Yeah, I think we sort of achieved that. I mean, it smells genuine as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, we said like the first thing that we sort of noticed was the smell and the familiarity of it.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, the amount of ROC posts that we not clocked up as many as you, but we're getting, you know, slowly, well, what's left.
Ticking them off, yeah, tick them off.
But we're just grateful that this is obviously clearly the best one. What were we saying about, we spoke about Varian as well being another one that's probably in a good condition.
Yeah, Varian's excellent to go and visit. There's a really, really good one actually if you're ever in Northern Ireland, Portadown Post, which is run by a chap called Alistair McCann. He started restoring that at about the same time Mark and I started restoring this, and over the last 15 odd years or so we've heavily supported each other with finding equipment, you know, some of the physical work of, you know, the materials, fixing concrete paint, that sort of, you know, stuff. There's another pretty good one up in North York Moors, Castleton, ROC Post, run by a good friend of ours, Jack. The three of us kind of try and work as a little triad to try and support each other as best we can with equipment and advice and help. And we've become friends over the years as well. Like, we also meet up for like social trips and stuff like that.
You even had a claim to fame for ROC Penshurst as well.
Yeah, ROC Penshurst is quite interesting because I've known for many, many years the chap that I saw your video actually that you did with Ginge of Penshurst, and I'm pleased to see that he's kept it in really good order. So my friend John bought that 2 decades ago probably, and he restored it before it was sold on to Ginge. And interestingly, a little thing that you would never know from looking at it, but it got broken into 8-9 years ago, and the top of the concrete hatch got smashed off. And we recast it. 4 of us went up there for a weekend, and we, you know, recast the concrete top and reset the hatch and all the rest of it. And John at the time was driving an Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and it's had a couple of timing chains done over the years. So we took the old timing chains and used them to make some reinforced concrete. So Penshurst ROC Post concrete lid is held down with timing chains from a 1970s Aston Martin V8 Vantage, which is a bit weird. So John really was a big influence actually in I've known him for a long time and known he's been involved in that sort of heritage stuff. He's been involved in many projects. You've mentioned some off camera, like Wanston Battery. He's been involved in that. Wartling, the sound mirrors at Foreland. We're hoping to do something with another rotor bunker somewhere in the southeast. I'm not going to tell you which one, but we're hoping we might be able to do it might just be a one-off thing, but anyway, we're hoping. So he's had a lot of those kind of contacts over the years, and he gave us a lot of advice about how to get this, weather tight again, really, because it did leak a little bit and so on.
I mean, what's really the future that you want for this, really? I mean, I don't know if that's a bit of a loaded question, but you know what I mean by that. Like,
it's a difficult one, and it is one that Mark and I and Bob, who helps us on our open days and has done for the last 5 or 6 years, he's a former core member. We get an awful lot of support from former ROC for preserving their heritage, but we get a surprising amount, more so in fact, of everyday people saying this is amazing, this is something that's relatively modern. All right, it was built in the 50s, or in this case early 60s, but a lot of people that come and visit are like, well, 1991, like I was 10 years old, or I started my first job in 19, like that was not that long ago, really, in the scheme of things. When people see the stuff that says British Telecom, they're like, but British Telecom still exists now. I'm not, well, sort of, Openreach or whatever they're called, but anyway. So I think we're going to carry on doing it until either we physically can't, or until we have open days and not a soul turns up and it's nice and sunny or something. And then I think it will probably step down to almost like a care and maintenance, and we'll open it up by appointment for interested parties. And we'll probably go for that sort of model. I mean, Very Post has been going for 30 plus years. We've been going half that time. So I think there's a bit of mileage in it still. The difficult thing, I think, is that trying to find something, keeping it interesting without it becoming overcrowded or stale or having too much not related equipment in it is a bit of a challenge. We try and keep it just to one era, 1980s.
And I think we know that obviously for the state of what ROC posts are now, you'd be really lucky to find half as good as one to even want to restore anymore. Do you know what I mean? You've obviously seen I've seen a lot of ROC posts. You'll go in and you go, it's a lost cause when they're just so.
Yeah,
so
although
if you wanted to restore it, it's a lot.
A lot. Yeah, you've got. Yeah, I think the actual. If you took on an ROC, I mean, Penshurst, for instance, was flooded half out the walls when that was first restored. Just from the leaking in through the hatch, not because it was the structure or anything. This one had 3 inches of water on the floor, so they do flood. Yeah. So if you wanted to restore one and not have it as an ROC post museum or something, you could do that fairly straightforward. But I think some of the trouble would be is some of the equipment is very hard to find. I mean, it was hard to find. I've been collecting ROC stuff for longer than the post. I've been collecting ROC stuff for nearly 20 years. And stuff that RF Marchington Depot had loads of it. They were using the FSM dome I showed on the surface as car park bollards, and they were $5 each. That just doesn't happen anymore because the equipment has found its way into permanent collections almost now. So what is out there is either really expensive, and a lot of people want it, hence expensive, or just doesn't exist anymore because it was all landfilled. Because this sort of thing, the bomb power indicator. The Home Office collected them all up. They put them all in Marchington Depot. They put them in a place in Northern Ireland and a place in Scotland as well. And then in 2008-ish, they're like, we're never going to need these again. Off they go to the scrap man.
I think it's important to note, like what you said was that, especially in the Cold War days, was that they'd got X amount they had to build. And even if the threat of Cold War wasn't there, it was actually cheaper to build it than to actually demolish it. So it's more expensive. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right. So
to demolish it than it actually was to give. I think I remember reading that about Breed Southern Water Control that when they were doing Cold War and they were doing that actually that one there was no threat of Cold War really at that point. But they were like, well, we've commissioned this to build it. It's actually cheaper to actually build
to carry on and finish the program than it is to stop. And exactly. Which is why you find things like RAF or Aspidistra, which was a propaganda radio station over in Crowborough, or Crowborough is now police thing. That became an RGHQ 6.1 or something like that. And that was literally finished in 1991 and then never used for its intended purpose because it was almost cheaper. Government contracts like that, once you've started them, you can't just stop them.
Yeah.
So, that's why there's stuff that feels really weird. Why was that built in 1991 when the but that's the reason why.
Thank you, mate. Are you okay just to show us some interesting stuff around here?
Yeah, happy days. Yeah,
Right,
of course.
Let's do it. Come on then.
Okay, a couple of key bits that were common to all ROC posts. There's three main pieces of equipment that were used for carrying out the role of the monitoring of the fallout, etc., etc. One of them's on the surface. I'll show that in a bit. But two are underground. The first one is called the bomb power indicator. It's this big white analog gauge here. It's connected to some plates on the surface. That picks up the blast pressure of a nuclear explosion, transmits the pressure wave down the pipe, and it will give you a reading in originally PSI, but then they were updated into kilopascals. Reset it underneath, wait for it to happen again. The reason that's there will become apparent when I've described some of the other bits of equipment. The other key piece of equipment is the fixed survey meter. So the original version was a big white analog gauge. This is the more modern PDRM82F for fixed, so developed in the early 80s by Plessey. Digital display, and it's got a radiation probe on a rod that you would push up. The locking plate's on at the moment, but you would push up this aperture in the ceiling. It sits underneath the weather dome at the top, and then you can get above ground radiation readings in safety below ground. So you can then figure out if it's, terribly dangerous to go upstairs or just mildly dangerous. The third bit of equipment, we can look at that in greater detail upstairs, but the ground zero indicator. The post worked in little groups of 3 called a cluster. Each post had one of these, and the ground zero indicator. The ground zero indicator would show where the bomb had actually landed. And then you have 3 pressure readings at a now known distance from where that bomb had landed, that you could then use calculators to calculate how big that bomb was, and then you can extrapolate how much damage it would have done.
Behind you, because I've not seen one in an ROC post, but I've seen actually plenty of these in other Cold War sites, namely emergency centres, etc., etc.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is some form of ventilation.
Yeah, it is. So this actually isn't original to Cuckfield, but we got given this by a former observer on the Red Hill post. In the middle of COVID, it was very weird picking it up from his front door and like walking back 10 paces and not able to shake his hand. And the guy's emigrated to Portugal now. But he gifted us this, and we thought it's quite an important thing to display because it shows how, even though we were ramping up towards the end of the Cold War by the mid-80s, the Royal Observer Corps were testing things like this to update the post, because as they were built, they didn't have any active filtration. It was just the vents, and you'd shut them or open them. That was it. But they trialled 6 of these in 6 different posts across the country. And this one was one of the ones trialled from down south in 2 Group, which is what Cuckfield is part of, 2 Group. I don't know the outcomes of the trial because the events of the Cold War sort of overtook it, but this was installed in Red Hill Post. It was taken off at Standdown, given to us about 5 or 6 years ago, and we thought we'd put it up to explain that the Corps was still trying to move on, even though the Cold War was winding down by that point. But you're right, it is a forced ventilation system, manual, very similar to the ones in the emergency centre, made by Lua, which are a Swiss company, I think, or were. I think they're a Swiss company. And they're usually much bigger barrel type things with huge powered vents and so on. But this is a handheld one designed for small personnel bunkers. You can have it in 2 modes. One is as it's set up now, which is peacetime. The pipes are joined together, and that is just, it will draw in fresh air and it blows it out this vent. In a wartime situation, you can swap the pipes onto the top and bottom of this, which is just charcoal and
Filter,
cotton wool,
isn't it?
a filter really. And that will filter out toxins and chemicals and gases. And you would literally, you can have a go on a bit if you want, you literally just turn it to keep the arrow sort of round about there. And you do that for, I'd have to dig out the SOP to have a look, so someone will probably correct me on this, but I think it was 10 minutes every hour or 10 minutes every couple of hours.
Give me an exercise.
Yeah.
To keep your mind active,
for one of your arms. Anyway, we'll move on.
Amazing.
Yeah, but that's why we put it up, because as far we've actually only been able to track down 4 that are on display. I don't know where the other 2 went out of the 6 prototypes.
I was lucky to in Norwich's emergency centre. It actually still worked.
Yeah.
On the video, you can actually see the switch, and it's haunting in a strange way,
Yeah.
because it's a bit of reality that the moment it works, you're realising actually this was for a purpose.
Yeah. Life support system, really. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, this is if this goes down, that's kind of it. I mean, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm just really curious because I think when I'm in here, it's actually, I don't know what it is. When you go into an abandoned one, it actually doesn't feel that spacious. And yet when I'm in here, it's still cramped, but actually you've got
Yeah.
manoeuvrability.
You
I
have,
don't know why
yeah.
it is that when I've been into every other one, it always just feels a little bit more
I think
condensed. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. And when you're in one that's bare, that said everything stripped out of it, you've got no reference point for.
Absolutely.
You've got to just imagine 3 people would have worked in
You
here.
might have
This
had
isn't even big
benches.
enough for my car.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But actually, if you look at the layout, you know, the beds are either here or they're against that back wall. You know, whichever. But it worked 3 people down here. It works on a hotbed system, so you'd have one person asleep, one person working, and one person, you know, just coming to the end of the shift or halfway through the shift. So they'd be constantly rotating over. And actually, a lot of the work they did would just be sitting at the desk, and then all you'd really need to do was walk to go to the toilet or some space to prep some food. You didn't need a huge amount of.
I always remember just one final thing I wanted to say, because actually as we head up, it'd be quite interesting to know, and you can correct me on this, because I always remember this. It's just one of these things, like when I first started going to ROC Post, was that there was a slight flaw of ROC Post in terms of you could easily get exposed if you had to go up. If
So,
there was,
yeah.
for the paper, the
ground zero indicator, change the papers. They also did mobile monitoring patrols where they'd go out and measure radiation levels in like a field over the road and that sort of thing. The common misconception is that these were built as a survival shelter for the crews to live in to then come out intact and survive. The reality was not that. They were, think of them almost as a static armoured personnel carriage designed to keep the troops, in this case civil volunteers of the Royal Observer Corps, you know, a civil service role essentially, designed to keep them alive long enough to do their job, which was the expectation was 3 to 4 4
And
then
they probably were aware of that as well.
Absolutely, they would have been. Yeah, absolutely.
They wouldn't have been able to tell their their family. Or anything. I mean, it's that I remember. Sorry, mate. There's a classic story. I always remember that that at Breed Southern Water, bless him, the bloke's obviously not there anymore. He obviously seen, but obviously there's a classic story that he said that he couldn't tell his family, and they wouldn't be able to join him into the bunker if it had all gone down. And
so similar thing here. If you join the Royal Observer Corps as a civilian member or as a salaried full-time staff member, paid staff member, or salaried, of course it's paid, you sign the Official Secrets Act. So it was one of those things that was secret but in an open kind of way. They'd have a recruitment stand at air shows or on a high street fair or something like that. I think if you were involved in the Corps or you had someone that was involved in the Corps, and this is picking up things from conversations with dozens and dozens and dozens of former observers over the year, you know, we get at least 2 or 3 every open day come and visit us still, which is amazing. There seems to be a kind of, we're all in it together. The camaraderie was massive. It was more about, a lot of it was about kind of like the social thing and supporting each other.
Well?
Men and women, men and women.
I think we need to make aware of.
Yeah, it was absolutely men and women. There was posts that were mixed. There was posts that were all men. There was posts that were all women. Absolutely.
Because I'm trying to ask you questions that I keep thinking if I put that in my other ROC, but they're all been about. Do you know what I mean? So it's actually quite good to actually talk to someone who I can feel justified in my own knowledge. Do you know what I mean? Of like going, you know what I mean? Like,
there was men and women.
Not many people know that, like for example, there was men and women. It wasn't bunker by name, but not really by. Yeah,
bunker is a bit of a contentious one, to be honest with you. They were referred to as posts, which is, I think, a bit of a throwback to the Second World War when they were aircraft spotting posts. They were above ground, but they were known as posts throughout. And you know, Cuckfield was known as 50 posts. Every post had a number designation. Bunkers is a bit more of a modern term. I mean, dictionary definition of a bunker, it literally meets the dictionary definition of a bunker, but you know, it was never meant to be a bunker in that sense of the word. It was underground purely to protect the observers from the effects of radiation, to keep them alive for a bit longer, to do their job, to get the information to the government, who would have been essentially blind to deaf in their regional government headquarters. They would have relied on this sort of information filtering through. But you're right. I think that there was a lot of the observers I've spoken to, you know, they were issued official rations. There's some examples down there, 1980s rations. A lot of them said, well, no, we supplemented it with our own stuff that we'd, you know, canned and pickled ourselves or that we'd bought or whatever. Oh, well, what about the 3 crew members that went in there? What about their families? Oh, well, it was a given that, you know, if those 3 crew members were in there, another crew member who wasn't in there would do their best to take them in and look after them, and they'd all sort of support each other. A lot of the people I've spoken to have had a really big emphasis on the way that they were all in it together and that they would all support each other and that they'd all step up, and some of them would be in here and some of them wouldn't be able to be. big ask for a civilian organisation, I think. Big ask.
Well, you used the word civilian. I mean,
Absolutely,
that's the key word, really, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
They were uniformed civil service. They came under the control of the RAF. They wore RAF uniform. The rank structure and everything was very similar to the RAF, but they were civilian volunteers. Which is, like a retained firefighter type role, I suppose. Lived in the local area, doing something for your local community. These were all people that worked in the vicinity or lived in the vicinity. It might be the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, that sort of thing. Or the lawyer or the farmer or whoever. Yeah. But they were all volunteers and they were all doing it as an extra thing for their community and for doing something that they felt was bigger than the sum of its parts, which arguably you could say it is. A lot of people will say absolutely pointless. I don't know why they even bothered, but I disagree with that, because to plan and not use it is better than to not plan at all. And actually, these people took their job very seriously.
Well, I mean, I always said, like, my dad, for example, was stationed in Germany during the Cold War. He would argue that being there, the Cold War was definitely a serious thing, because he was part of the American troops who were right on the border, and if it hit, he wasn't a pilot, but he was one of the ground. So he was quite aware, like seeing all the Americans and the big bombers, and he's just like, no, that if this hit, like for him, it was like he was only there for a short period of time, but enough that it was like
this is actual, actually. Whereas for a lot of people, back in the States or here, it was propaganda on the television, or it was a televised proxy war. Vietnam, all that, Korea, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Televised proxy wars. It wasn't like the Second World War where families would literally, everybody knew someone that was either fighting, had died fighting, or had been bombed, or had been evacuated, or everyone was on rations. It wasn't like that, televised. So unless you were involved in the forces or something like that, you'd be a bit detached from it. I mean, I remember my parents being a little bit nervous of it. Particularly my dad. I mean, he did stuff after the fall of the Berlin Wall with humanitarian stuff in Soviet Union. I've still got a certificate from some Moscow organisation. I'm a bit, it's hidden in the drawer now. It's a bit politically hot potato at the moment, isn't it? But you're right. I think unless you were involved in some way, it did feel distant and televised. It's happening over there, not right on your doorstep. I think if you're living in West Germany, would feel very different, or East Germany would feel very different.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much, mate. Shall we head upstairs?
Of course. Is there anything else you wanted to see or look at? And here's a couple of other bits of stuff I can point out if you want
to, mate, that'd be fantastic.
Teletalk, primary means of communication. So this is almost like a conference call over the telephone lines. Every single post had one of these. You could hear the group control. They would call you by a call sign. You'd press to talk.
Quite a humble little piece of kit. Really.
Humble little piece of kit. I mean? 1 in 3 posts was equipped with a VHF radio, and they were designated as a master post. Cuckfield was a master post. You can tell that they're master posts because of the black top hat on the vent shaft. I'll show you in a minute. Master posts have that. It's got that radio connections underneath it. Normal posts don't have that. Cool. So VHF radio, Home Office issue. It's got Home Office on it actually. Yeah. Home Office property written somewhere. Yep, it's quite cool. And then this thing here is, I'm sure you've heard of the 4-minute warning.
Yeah, of course.
RF Farningdale's ballistic missile early warning station. This is the final end of that whole chain, 4-minute warning chain. So RF Farningdale's would pick up an incoming ballistic missile. They would manually use something called an injection point. There was a couple of them around the country. They would, the operator would speak into a microphone and say, whatever the message was going to be, incoming thing. That would filter out to all police stations in the land simultaneously and all carrier control points, which were mainly police stations. And the police officers would then trigger that alert, and then they would come out 19,000 warning points, which are these, or powered sirens, like there's one on top of Queen's Hall in Cuckfield. They'd all go off simultaneously. So that is right at the very end of that chain of the 4-minute warning, and it operated over the BT private wires, so the speaking clock.
So basically, you don't want to hear that if that happens.
No. That'd be
one of the
bad.
most scariest bits of this post in Australia, isn't it? Because that is like, wow, okay.
It is. It's the bit.
If that goes, that's.
It's the one bit that sends a little chill up my spine, because bomb power indicator sounds cool, the teletalk sounds cool, the radio's cool, the ground zero indicator's cool, but if that went off, you got 4-minute warning. Interestingly, the Americans had something like 22 minutes warning, which is why the UK was known as the unsinkable battleship. Unbelievable. Anything else, mate? I know I've got my standard. Only very basic stuff. There's no mains water, no mains electric, no mains drainage. So
see, there's some that looks quite low to me. But that's, again, I'm trying to put it in context of
Lots of different. To be honest with you, I had to redo the handle because it used to be like that, or round here, and you'd catch your shorts on it as you come down the ladder. There are minor variations. Some of them the sump's up here. Some of them have got a whale pump. Some of them it's the other way round. You do this.
Yeah.
I think just the way that the builders built them. But the sump is for, it's just basically for drainage, the lowest point.
Just
water, leaks that come in, you can pump it back out, it just goes to a tiny soakaway, and if it doesn't work anymore, but we bail it with a milk bottle and a bucket. But anyway, so sump just for the drainage, chemical toilet for that, bottled water or jerry cans of water for drinking and cooking, ration packs, and then batteries and a generator for lighting.
We said before, obviously it's storage as well, which is bizarre because you've got a chemical toilet in there as well, and you've got a vent.
Do you want to pop your camera around there and have a little look? You can see.
Just to see an actual nice one.
Yeah, it's just a little toilet closet, chemical toilet, a couple of oversuits.
Like that somewhere.
And there's the vent. There's the other vent. So vent at either end of the room, and then a vent halfway up the shaft.
A lot of people they miss that at the top, and it's a nice bit of detail. You've got a secondary sort of vent unit, and you kind of can look at that and then just go, oh right, well that's kind of like really interesting. Do you know what I mean? So it's, but fascinating. Obviously the old chemical toilet, and then you've got clothes. I'm assuming pegs for clothes and stuff. If
and there's some jackets on the back. There's a just a rain mat thing. Are these all original? Jerkin, wool coat thing, because these actually, it's quite nice down here. We've only been down here for a little bit, but if you're down here all day, it's actually a bit chilly. What is it? It's about, it's 20 degrees in here. We've warmed it up a bit, but it usually sits around 14, and it's surprisingly cold if you're sitting still doing nothing.
And I'm assuming that would have been an asbestos.
Yeah, would have been an asbestos one. However, we did change it for a modern. Well, I say it's not modern. I think it's still period dated, 88 or something, but a non-85, but a non-asbestos fire blanket.
That's actually quite interesting to see that for being in that respect. But I love that.
So the asbestos ones were pink or green. So if you see a pink or green one, don't pick it up and shake it out. But that was got rid of whilst the core was still.
Tools as well,
Yeah, for the
general maintenance,
the sump pump if you need to service that, the disconnecting the FSM dome on the surface, that sort of bits and pieces. Yeah, general maintenance.
And the final thing I wanted to point out for everybody is this wonderful clicking noise that we can hear. Obviously, there's which is actually so you've got there's a timer, isn't it, for.
Yes, and there's two, simply because this was original as built.
That's the one they're the ones I've always seen.
This was original as built. Yeah. The post then was closed in the cuts in 1968, but then was reopened in 1972 because ditchling, which was left open in the cuts, just kept flooding and they couldn't get over it. So when they reopened it in 72, they redid all the electrics and just added. So we've ended up with both eras. These don't do anything, but this is all the live stuff. I can actually show you what the original lighting was like, if you like. Might be a little dark on the camera, but
it sends realism.
That's modern LEDs we put in, but that's the original.
Wow. Okay. Oh, now see that totally changes the atmosphere. Obviously, we've got Paul and Jensen here. So what do you think, guys?
It's really good, isn't it?
Gents, what do you reckon? Could you drive in here, mate? No. But that is.
Makes it a lot more atmospheric, doesn't it?
Ones, I've seen like the little switch, but without the bulb in it, obviously. Yeah. And you sometimes think, is that all they had down here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, there's a strip light as well, but that's so heavy on the battery that you wouldn't use it unless you needed to. But if you're in here for even, if we were to stay down here for another 20 minutes or so, we're not going to, but even if we did, your eyes would get so adjusted to this light that actually that is plenty to sit and work there.
Yeah.
But not so much that the dude in the bed...
He's going to get distracted, isn't he?
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's fairly efficient on the batteries. I did work it out with the original batteries. It would run it for something like 30 odd days off one charge, if you just used the one singular light. So
little details, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It gives that sort of extra credibility to understanding that sort of like realism, really. Like what I'm saying. So right. Well, thank you, mate. Shall we head upstairs?
Yeah. Okay. Let's. Whoops.
Right, come on then.
So, a couple of bits on the surface. We've had a good look around downstairs. The one thing I'll point out, actually the three things. The two instruments we talked about downstairs, that silver disc, that's the top end of the bomb power indicator. So that's the baffle plates that will pick up that blast wave from an explosion and send it down the pipe. That grey dome, polycarbonate dome, that's the of radiation detecting head is inside that, and that's the weather cover for it, so it can stay out in all weathers down in the monitoring room. And then the third bit of equipment I told you about is just as important, really. It's called the ground zero indicator. And there's what this is, this thing that looks like a circular bread bin. It's got 4 pinhole cameras, one for each cardinal point of the compass, with low light photographic paper inside. And is what happens with the bright flash of a nuclear explosion is it will make a mark on the paper, and that will give you your height and it will give you your bearing. So like I mentioned downstairs, these posts worked in little groups of 3 within a group of about 30. So you'd have 3 posts that have got heights and bearings, so you can then triangulate where those lines intersect on a map. It was exactly where that bomb landed. You can figure out if it was a ground burst or an air burst, because there's a big difference between the two. One produces loads of radiation and quite a lot of damage, a ground burst. An air burst doesn't produce as much radiation because it's up in the atmosphere, it doesn't throw the dirt up, but does produce a colossal amount of damage because it's literally like a pancake fist down onto the earth. So you needed to know what type of strike it had been, so the government can say, right, Haywards Heath is just a smoking crater, or Brighton is just flattened, but there might not be too much radiation, so actually we might be able to evacuate people, you know, to there from up north or whatever. So these are the photographic papers, and they would be changed about every 12 hours or so, and they're keyed, so they only fit in one place. So the north only ever fits in the north, because they've got like a little cutout on the bottom that fits in. So number 3 observer would come up, they would have new sets of papers in one of these. I'd have it around the neck, I'm not going to put it on. So there's an unopened original set. So they would come up, they would out in, back down the shaft. Downstairs they would have a little look at them, report what was on them to group headquarters, and then repeat again when it happened, another strike, or when the time was up. The time was up because, as you can see from this one, that's an original bit of photograph paper in there, the normal daylight blackens them after a while. So this is a photocopy of a demonstration one we made a long time ago now. Actually, we made it for the One show, weirdly, using some studio strobes, and it took the guy something like 300 flashes with the studio strobe to get a burn mark. And that just, to put it on, where's my north marker? And that just goes on like that.
And this is where we're talking about the vulnerability of somebody who'd have to come up for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
That was like the vulnerability of the misconception of them that you'd be sealed in, but actually fundamentally on that occasion, well, for you that you've got to come out and you actually got to be exposed by whatever. Yeah, exactly.
At least twice a day they'd come out and change the papers, and they didn't have. Well, there isn't really anything you can wear to protect you from radiation. You can get fallout dust on you and you can take that outer layer of clothes off, but there's not something you can wear to stop the radiation getting to your body. You know, the amount of lead you'd have to wear, you wouldn't be able to walk around. So no, it was a thing to extend life in rather than to survive and repopulate the world.
Cool.
That black bit on the end of the vent hatch there, so there's 2 vents, that black dome thing looks like a top hat on its side. That was the top hat I was referring to. It's got the radio coaxial connectors, power, and the pneumatic connection, because the mast is pump up pneumatic. So you pump it up, make transmission, let the air out, and it will come back down again to prevent it getting damaged.
And that's our bollard.
Yeah. So I've got a couple more of these actually, but they were painted white with a yellow top, and this bit was yellow, and they were literally just plonked on the floor like that in the car park at Marchington Depot as parking bollards. Luckily they painted it with, I don't know what it was, but it came off with a pressure washer. And then as soon as I'd done it, I thought, I probably should have kept one of them original, because that's how it was later used. And but I'll strip the paint off. So anyway, so yeah, there we go. That is Cuckfield ROC Post. So a bit different to some of the derelict ones you get to see. It's probably quite nice for you to see the kit in context and understand how it might have worked if we'd needed to for real.
Cheers, mate. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Well, everybody, I just want to say a massive thanks to Ed for his time and everything else, and our wonderful off-the-camera conversations. It's nice to meet like-minded individuals and people like that, isn't it? Really, it's beautiful. That it's gives me hope that there are genuine history lovers out there who,
Yep, there are.
we want to say the obvious thing. Thank you so much to you two as well, by the way, because I don't normally say good. Thanks to Paul and
really,
James.
do
No,
you?
sorry, mate. Sorry about that. Just in the background. All the photos, all the photos provided, by the way, will be by Paul and his wonderful camera work. But also, on a final note, if we needed not to say it, but we'll put it down in the link below. Please understand this is a permission visit. They do guided tours on special days. I'm not saying anything that I'm not.
No, that's fine. Yeah, we have
Please-
open days in the summer.
Yeah, and
we advertise them online.
yeah, and that's basically it. So please don't, just respect the fact that you can visit this, but on select open days, and there will be a link down below for you to check when those days are available. So please, that's quite straightforward, and obviously it might be a nice little treat for you next summer, maybe for new people, new faces and stuff like that. Thank you so much, everybody. Hopefully you really enjoyed this. I'm sort of fading in and out of the camera. That's all right. I'll do on a beautiful evening now, which is lovely. The sun has come out. Really lovely. Thank you everybody for watching. Feel free to spread the word channel. Much love to all of you out there. And as we always said, if it wasn't for people's encouragement and their genuine interest in this channel, we wouldn't be doing half as much what we do. So thank you to every single one of you out there. And just a quick cheeky one. Sorry, Sophie couldn't come. I'm just a little bit sorry about that. Sorry, not sorry. She'll be all right with that. But anyway, take care, everybody. Much love to all of you out there. Take care. Thanks, Ed, mate. See you later, guys. See ya. Bye.